The RSPB is calling for more action to prevent and prosecute bird crime. Latest figures from its annual survey released today show that last year there were hundreds of reports of birds of prey being shot and poisoned, as well as thefts of eggs from nests. It's 3 years since the charity challenged the government to increase efforts to end persecution of birds of prey. It claims none of their recommendations have yet been acted upon. Mark Thomas from the RSPB told me the figures for last year make worrying reading.
Birds of prey are still being persecuted in the UK in 2013. We had 238 reports of crimes, and this ranged from shooting, trapping, poisoning and nest destruction. And the very species this affects are iconic birds: hen harrier, golden eagle and peregrine falcons.
And you would argue that this is being done deliberately?
Yes, we know that these crimes are deliberate, so the deliberate placing of poison baits, the deliberate shooting and trapping of birds. This year we've had 76 individual birds poisoned. Last year that was only 29, so clearly we've got an increase there in confirmed poisoning of birds of prey. And this is across the whole of the UK, the uplands and the lowlands. We had a case only last week in court in Norfolk where a gamekeeper was prosecuted and found guilty for poisoning 10 buzzards. We had another case in Cumbria where we actually filmed a gamekeeper beating a buzzard to death inside a trap. Very, very graphic. When we look at the 10-year data set for all of this, this is not decreasing. These incidents are increasing very slightly, and it's such a shame that this is going on in modern day society.
But quite a lot has changed over that decade in the attitude to this sort of thing, hasn't it? In that we now have police forces with wildlife crime officers. There's a much more coordinated approach. What more can you expect?
We've got a much more coordinated approach in the modern day. So we've got wildlife crime officers across the UK, we've got lots of raptor groups. One thing that has definitely happened in recent years is we've had a huge amount of public support. So the public had a mass demo in the Peak District in the Derwent Valley calling for an end to illegal persecution and letting hen harriers survive. When we look at the data of who is committing these offences, 69% of all prosecutions are for gamekeepers. The RSPB wants to see a change in the system. We want to bring in licensing of grouse moors, and what that would basically mean is if a wildlife crime is carried out on a particular grouse moor, the person running that shoot would lose the ability to run that as a grouse moor for a period of time. We quite frequently speak to gamekeepers in confidence who tell us they're under enormous pressures to carry out these offences. What we've got in Scotland is a law called vicarious liability, which means the landowners can actually be prosecuted for the offences as well. And since 2012, when that came in, we've had a significant decrease in the numbers of poisoning incidents. So where there would have been 55 to 6 years ago, we're down just to a handful of those things. We want that law brought in England and Wales. It will make a huge difference. Vicarious liability alongside licensing could really solve this problem.
What impact does this have on the numbers of birds and the health of those populations?
A classic example is golden eagle. We've got core populations in Scotland, but when young eagles are born and they start to range around and find new territories, you would expect some of them would cross over into northern England. In northern England, we've got one lone golden eagle, and that bird is desperately waiting for a mate to come south of the border, but persecution is stopping that happening. So it has a real marked impact.
Mark Thomas from the RSPB. Well, a spokesman for the National Gamekeepers organisation told us it utterly condemns the illegal persecution of birds of prey or any wildlife crime and is wholeheartedly committed to stamping it out. The gamekeeping profession, it adds, genuinely deplores those very, very few among their number who break the law, whom it describes as mavericks in the countryside.